They say blood is thicker than water, but I've come to learn that entitlement runs even thicker, especially when there's money, or a house, involved. The day of the reading, I sat quietly in the back, expecting nothing. And still, nothing could have prepared me for what the lawyer said next. My name is Elise Harper. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings and, according to my family, the least ambitious. I'm a nurse, not a corporate powerhouse like my sister Laura or a jet-setting investment advisor like my brother Philip, but let me take you back, because you need to know how we got here to understand why what happened next shook my entire family to their core. My parents, Janet and Walter Harper, were the embodiment of the American dream. High school sweethearts who built a life from scratch, he in finance, she in real estate. By the time I was in high school, they had already bought their dream house, a 4-bedroom colonial perched on a hill in Westchester, with a sprawling lawn and stained glass windows that caught the morning sun like magic. I used to spend hours lying on the staircase reading, listening to my mom hum as she repotted her orchids. That house wasn't just a house, it was the heartbeat of our family. Until it wasn't. As we grew older, something shifted. Laura took over the real estate business, Philip went into high-stakes investing, and I chose nursing. They rolled their eyes at me, called me a Mother Teresa, and the bleeding heart. My dad used to joke that I was the sentimental one, always more concerned with people than profits. To AT first, it didn't bother me. I loved my job, and I loved coming home to visit, but over time, those visits became colder. Invitations dwindled. Decisions were made without me. I was never outright disowned, but it was clear, I was being slowly, carefully edged out. When Mom passed away first, I was the one who stayed overnight at the hospital, holding her hand. Laura and Philip flew in for the funeral in designer black, and left the next morning without asking how I was holding up. That was the first time I noticed I hadn't been consulted on her will. I let it go. Then Dad's health started to decline. I offered to move in, help him. He refused. Laura's already made arrangements, he said. Arrangements that didn't include me. The day of the will reading felt like a formality. I showed up out of respect, not expectation. I wore a plain black dress and sat in the corner while Laura and Philip chatted near the fireplace of the attorney's office, sipping expensive lattes and looking mildly annoyed to be there. Mr. Cartwright, our family's longtime lawyer, adjusted his glasses and began. I half listened as the typical bequests were read: jewelry to Laura, stocks to Philip, art pieces to be auctioned off for charity. And then he said it. My name, Elise Harper, he said clearly. My heart thudded. I sat up straighter. My siblings turned toward me, both with the same smirk, one I'd come to recognize over the years. That amused, patronizing expression that said, "You're about to get a fruit basket." To Elise, Mr. Cartwright continued, "Your father bequeaths the property at 42 Maple Ridge Lane, along with all its contents and full ownership rights, effective immediately." Dead silence. Laura's coffee cup slipped from her hand and hit the carpet with a soft thud. Philip blinked like he hadn't heard correctly. I sat frozen, unsure if I had the house. Laura snapped, standing up. "That's a mistake. That's our home." Mr. Cartwright raised an eyebrow. "Your father was quite clear. It was his wish that Elise receive the home. In fact, the deed was quietly transferred into her name 6 months ago." 6 months ago? That was before Dad stopped taking my calls. Before he got worse. Why hadn't he told me? Philip leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. "There must be some kind of mix-up. Elise doesn't even like that house." But I did. I loved it. It was the last place where my family had ever truly felt like a family. And apparently, Dad had known that. The lawyer handed me a manila envelope containing the keys and deed. Laura stormed out. Philip trailed after her, muttering about legal loopholes and second opinions. I stayed behind, stunned. Mr. Cartwright looked at me kindly. "Your father left a note for you," he said, pulling out a separate envelope. "He asked me to give it to you privately." My hands trembled as I opened it. It was short, but it changed everything. "Elise, you were always the heart of this family. Even when no one noticed. You loved without condition and gave without keeping score. I saw that. I may not have said it enough, but I saw you. This house was your mother's favorite place. She once told me, Elise may not make millions, but she saves lives. She's the only one I trust to hold this family together. I think she was right. Take care of it. Make it yours. Forgive us if you can love." Dad. I cried in the parking lot for nearly half an hour. Not just for the gift, but for all the years I'd doubted my place in this family. For all the times I'd swallowed their condescension, their silence, but I wasn't prepared for what would happen next. Within a week, Laura's attorney sent me a notice contesting the will. She claimed Dad had been mentally unfit at the time of the deed transfer. Philip backed her. They even tried to argue I had manipulated him in some way. I didn't have their money or legal firepower, but I had something better, the truth. And documents. Mr. Cartwright revealed Dad had undergone a full cognitive exam prior to the deed transfer, at Laura's own suggestion, ironically, to ensure his competence. Their challenge was dead on arrival. Then came the media spin. Laura's business partners leaked a story implying I had taken advantage of a grieving father. A few local blogs picked it up. Strangers sent me hate messages. I nearly deleted my social media, but then something strange happened. One of Mom's old friends, a woman named Della who used to volunteer at her charity events, reached out. "I just wanted you to know," she said, "your parents were proud of you. They spoke about you all the time at the club. Janet used to say, Elise may not make millions, but she saves lives. She's the only one I trust to hold this family together." I hung up and sobbed. Not because I was sad, but because I realized I hadn't been invisible. Not really. They just hadn't known how to show it. I moved into the house quietly, keeping a low profile. The front door still creaked. The orchids in the sunroom had wilted, but I started bringing them back. One by one. I even brought home a rescue dog, Archie, who took to the window seat like he was born for it. The first time Laura came to the house after everything, it wasn't to apologize. She showed up unannounced, looking around like she was casing the place. "You should sell," she said flatly. "You can't afford the upkeep." "I can manage," I replied calmly, offering her tea. She didn't drink it. Philip came a week later, this time with a different angle. "We were thinking, maybe we could buy you out. Full market value. No hard feelings." I smiled politely. "Thanks, but no. You're wasting it," he said sharply. "This was our family home." "No," I said, standing up. "You made your choices. You shut me out long before the will did. This house belongs to the one person who treated it like a home, not a trophy." With every nail I hammered and every tile I replaced, it felt like I was reclaiming something more than just old drywall. I was reclaiming identity, memory, and healing. The guest room became my sanctuary for quiet evenings, and I converted Dad's study into a mini library. I kept some of his old finance books, though I doubted I'd ever read them. Spring came quickly. I found myself repainting the kitchen cabinets at midnight, driven more by emotion than necessity. I'd always avoided big changes, but now I realized I wasn't preserving a museum. I was building a future. What I didn't expect it though was who showed up next at my door. It was a rainy Thursday when I saw a familiar car in the driveway. When I opened the door, I nearly dropped the tea mug in my hand. It was Aunt Helen, my mother's younger sister, and someone who distanced herself from the family long ago after an argument about the estate business. She looked thinner, older, but her eyes still held that piercing warmth. "I heard what happened," she said, brushing off her coat. "And I think you deserve to know the whole story." She sat on my reupholstered living room couch like she belonged there. And then she said something that stopped me cold. "Your parents changed their wills quietly, not out of favoritism, but because they were disappointed in how your siblings turned out." I stared, unsure how to process that. She sipped her tea. "After your mother passed, your dad came to me in tears. He said, Elise is the only one who came when it mattered. Laura and Philip only show up when there's something to gain. That house wasn't just a gift, it was a message." The words settled into my bones. All those years I doubted myself, wondering if I was just background noise in my family story. But maybe I was more central than I ever knew. After Aunt Helen left, I went up to the attic, the one place I hadn't fully explored. Dust-covered trunks and old boxes, but I was drawn to one in the far corner. Inside, beneath photo albums and report cards, I found a sealed envelope with my name written in Mom's handwriting. "Elise, open this when you're ready." My heart pounded as I unfolded the note. "I hope you find this one day when the house is yours. You were always the gentle center of our storm. If you're reading this, it means your father and I did the right thing. Forgive us for being quiet when we should have spoken up. This house is yours, not just because you loved it, but because you protected the soul of this family. Even when we didn't deserve it." I couldn't hold back the tears. Mom had known. She had seen me all along. The more I lived in the house, the more I understood what legacy really meant. Not just wealth or heirlooms, but warmth, trust, and memory. I started a monthly neighborhood book club in the sunroom. We read everything from thrillers to medical memoirs. I hung up photos of my parents, of Mom's orchids, of Dad's silly fishing hat. Slowly, laughter returned to the halls, and when my hospital offered me a promotion to lead a new community outreach program, I took it. I hosted health workshops in the dining room my parents once used for holiday dinners. It felt poetic, like the house had taken on a second life through my own. But just when everything felt settled, something else happened that made me pause. An email arrived from Philip. Just 2 lines. I've been thinking about what happened. Mind if we talk? Part of me wanted to delete it outright. But another part, the same one that once held his hand when he fell off his bike, hesitated. We met at a neutral cafe downtown. He looked older, less confident. Not the smug brother I remembered. I was wrong, he admitted. About you. About everything. Laura's still angry, but I've started therapy. I'm trying to figure out how we ended up here. I nodded. We all made choices. Some of us were just quieter about them. He looked down at his coffee. Is there room for a brother in your life again? I didn't answer right away. It wasn't about revenge anymore. I'd moved past that. But I'd also grown strong enough to know I didn't owe him anything, especially not immediate forgiveness. I'm open to seeing where this goes, I said slowly. But you'll have to earn your way back. He nodded, surprisingly respectful. Fair enough. We met a few times after that, just lunch, simple conversations. He didn't ask about the house again. Maybe he finally understood it wasn't about the bricks and mortar. It was about something far more valuable. Laura, however, stayed silent. And that was fine. Some chapters close without closure. A few weeks after the garden party, I found myself in the attic again, this time less as a mourner and more as a historian. I was cataloging old family mementos when I stumbled upon a bundle of unsent letters, tied with a green ribbon and tucked inside a weathered cigar box labeled simply Elise. They were all from my mother. Letters she had written to me over the years but never mailed. Some were from when I was in college, others when I first became a nurse. She talked about her fears, her pride in my choices, her regrets. One line struck me hardest. You walk through the world differently, Elise. You may feel like an outsider, but that's only because you were meant to lead from the margins. I spent the entire evening reading each letter, tears smudging the pages, and by morning, I felt lighter, like a lifetime of unspoken love had finally reached me. But with that healing came another thought, maybe it was time to give back more than just to friends and neighbors. Inspired by Mom's words, I reached out to a few nonprofit contacts and floated an idea I never thought I'd say out loud. Opening up parts of the house for community use. The dining room could host support groups. The garden could become a therapy space for hospital patients and caregivers. The library could serve as a free tutoring spot for local kids. By fall, we'd launched a trial program. Every Thursday evening, the sunroom, once filled with orchids and now blooming with community, welcomed widows, single parents, and frontline workers for a free dinner and conversation. I called it Harper Hearth, a nod to the family name, and to what this home had become, a safe place in the storm. But then, one quiet Thursday night, the last person I expected walked through the front door. Laura. She stood in the foyer with her arms crossed, but her eyes, always sharp, seemed unsure. I heard what you're doing here, she said. The neighbors talk. I waited. I wanted to see it for myself, she added, as though justifying her presence. I showed her around in silence. The garden lights were twinkling, and a group of women laughed over casserole and peach tea on the patio. Finally, she looked at me. It's impressive. I nodded. It's home. Laura ran a hand through her hair. I still think Dad made a mistake. There it was. The familiar edge. But then she sighed. But I also think I wasn't fair to you. That was new. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I'd learned the power of stillness. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. Just, maybe a chance to start again. Someday. I nodded slowly. Someday. Maybe. And for the first time in years, we sat on the porch swing together. We didn't talk about the past. We just watched the fireflies rise from the grass like stars being born. Months later, a local newspaper ran a feature on Harper Hearth. They took a picture of me on the porch steps, surrounded by volunteers and guests. Behind me, the stained glass windows caught the late afternoon sun. The caption read, "From family legacy to community sanctuary." I framed it and hung it in the front hallway, right next to a black and white wedding photo of my parents. When I caught my reflection in the glass one evening, something struck me. I had become the caretaker, the historian, the rebuilder. I wasn't just living in my parents' dream, I was expanding it, and somehow, that old house on the hill didn't feel like a weight anymore. It felt like a set of wings. But it's funny how something as cold as a will could lead to something so warm. Being left out of the inheritance, or so I thought, was a rejection. But what I got instead wasn't just property. It was purpose. Dad didn't give me the house to even the scales. He gave it to me because he knew I'd turn it into more than just square footage and sentiment. My family may never return to what it once was. But in this house, through letters, guests, laughter, and quiet healing, I found something richer than money and more enduring than resentment. Yet, even as the house grew into a community refuge, I sometimes caught myself wondering, did this truly close the chapter with my family? Or was it just the beginning of something else entirely? Winter was approaching, and with it came a wave of reflection. The house felt warmer than ever, filled with the hum of volunteers prepping for holiday dinners and kids decorating the large living room tree. But then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Can we meet? I want to talk." Laura. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. After all the years of silence and distance, why now? Why after everything? Still, I knew that sometimes, the hardest conversations were the most necessary. That we agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown the next morning. I arrived early, nerves twisting in my stomach. When Laura walked in, she looked both familiar and different, softer somehow, like the weight of the past had shifted. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure I would," I admitted. She smiled sadly. "Neither was I. But I wanted to tell you something important. I've been thinking a lot about Dad, about us, and about how I treated you. I was wrong. You deserved better." For the first time, Laura opened up about the years of pressure. From our parents, the high expectations, the forced roles, the unspoken judgments. But she also spoke about the guilt she carried for never standing up for me. We talked for hours. And though the road ahead felt uncertain, that morning planted the seed for healing, for a family maybe not perfect, but willing to try. With renewed hope, I decided to invite Laura to participate more actively in the house and its mission. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed to help organize the upcoming winter holiday events. Together, we transformed the house into a winter wonderland. Volunteers wrapped garlands around the banisters, baked pies in the kitchen, and turned the great room into a cozy gathering space. On Christmas Eve, Harper Hearth opened its doors wide. Neighbors, friends, and even some distant relatives came by to share food, stories, and music. I caught Laura laughing with the kids as they decorated cookies. The sight was so unexpected and healing that I felt tears prick my eyes. That night, under the soft glow of fairy lights, I realized something important. The house was no longer just mine. It belonged to everyone who found comfort within its walls, and maybe, just maybe, that included my family again. Months passed, and the house continued to thrive as a hub for the community. What started as a refuge had become a beacon of hope. One afternoon, as I was sorting through more old family photos, I found something remarkable, a small leather-bound journal belonging to my father. Inside, Dad had chronicled his thoughts on family, legacy, and the meaning of home. He wrote about his regrets, about how his pride sometimes blinded him to what truly mattered. He had also documented his hopes for me, his daughter who never quite fit, as he called me. Reading those words was like hearing his voice one last time. It was a reminder that inheritance isn't just about money or property. Sometimes, it's about the lessons, love, and values passed down in ways no one could ever capture. One quiet evening, as Archie and I were playing in the hallway, he suddenly stopped and pawed at a loose floorboard. Curious, I lifted it and found an old brass key wrapped in velvet. Taped to it was a note, written in my father's handwriting. "Some doors stay locked until the right heart finds the key." I searched the house for the lock it might open, an old cabinet, a forgotten drawer, but nothing seemed to fit. Days later, I realized the truth. The key wasn't meant for a physical door. It was a symbol, a sign that the most important doors in life open not with metal keys, but with forgiveness, courage, and love. Standing on the porch one spring evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought back to that day the lawyer handed me the keys to the house. What felt like a cruel twist had become the greatest gift of all. This house, once a symbol of exclusion and pain, was now a home full of life, laughter, and second chances. I understood then that family is not just the people we are born to, but the ones we choose to hold close. And the legacy I would leave behind? Not a will or deed, but a place where anyone, no matter their story, could find a door open wide. The house is still standing, of course. Stronger than ever. Inside, the walls echo with the voices of those who have found solace here. The garden blooms brighter each year. And on quiet nights, when the world feels too heavy, I sit by the window with Archie, and I remember the journey from being left out of the will to inheriting a dream, mine to shape, mine to share. And if you ask me now what family means, it's this house, these people, this story. A story still unfolding.